What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. First, I want to start off by saying Happy Easter. I hope you guys enjoy time with your family, friends, loved ones, and be safe on this holiday. Second, I want to apologize for not getting this post-fight commentary out the same night. I tried to do it right after the fights. I was filming yesterday, and I was exhausted, so now I'm getting to it. Not going to spend too much time talking about Peter Quillin, but I enjoyed myself watching all the fights. Peter Quillin and Lucas Konecki or connect the dots, whatever the fuck his name is. Um, I just, I'm kind of torn for Peter Quillin. He didn't look bad. He was definitely winning all, if not most of the rounds, and he didn't get embarrassed out there or anything. I just feel like I wanted and expected a little bit more from him. He looked to me like a guy who had learned some new tricks in training camp in the gym, and he was just like, "Oh, look at me! Look what I learned in the gym." And he didn't look like the Peter Quillin that fought Winky Wright or Peter Quillin that fought Gabe Rosado. He didn't look like he had that same intensity, and I thought he should have dared to been a little bit bolder in that fight. You're going in against a nobody, someone that I'm not trying to call names and shit, but the fans don't really know. He's not like a common household name in boxing. So I feel like those you really have to make a statement. If you look at other middleweights like Gennady Golovkin, he's he's beat some guys that are career 154 pounders, but look how he's doing it. He's like doing it in great fashion. Or if you look at even Curtis Stevens, his last fight, he fought a relatively unknown Toriano Johnson. Most people didn't know him, including myself. I didn't know much about Toriano Johnson, and I'll be the first to admit that. However, when it came down to it, Toriano Johnson came to scrap, and he was bringing the fight to Curtis Stevens, and he was on top of him, and he landed some good blows, and he showed he had a chin, and he was tough. And I think even though Curtis Stevens struggled in aspects of that fight, by stopping him late and rallying that storm, or rallying towards the end of weathering that storm, I feel like that's a bolder statement than what Peter Quillin did with Lucas Konecki or whatever. He just would look content, and he didn't have that same intensity. I felt like Peter Quillin fought with more ferocity in his Gabriel Rosado, even though he had trouble late in that fight too. The only difference is your new opponent, Lucas. We don't really know who he is. No one knew much about him, and he didn't look like he had the power to hurt Peter Quillin. He's a career 154 pounder, and Peter was getting hit, but he was just walking through his shots. He's a big middleweight. Peter Quillin is a big middleweight. So I'm like I said, I'm kind of torn. I expected a little bit more out of Quillin. Like, just put your foot on the gas and really go for it. Dare to be great in that fight, especially when you're in there against somebody that is not necessarily a respected top contender in your division. So again, Peter Quillin, I had no problem with the way he boxed in the sense of he was getting destroyed or anything. I think he just should have put it together a little bit more and really try to make a statement to all the other middleweights that I'm here, especially when you're with that level of competition. Now, if Peter Quillin was in there with anybody else who's a top five, like a top five middleweight, I wouldn't expect him to take all of the same risks. But when you're in there with a guy who's clearly smaller than you and we don't know, then yeah, you got to take that opportunity and really try to make a statement out of it. And I think Curtis Stevens has done that a lot. He's fought the Sal Romans and guys like that, and look how he gets them out of there. And I understand it's boxing. Some people are just tough. They can take a beating and keep on ticking. So you're not going to be able to knock everybody out. But I think Peter Quillin just could have done more. Period. Just more offensively. He was trying to implore a shoulder roll. For what? You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to do that to Triple G. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to walk through his punches like you were walking through Lucas Konecki. So that's pretty much that. Going to Shawn Porter versus Paulie Malignaggi. Now, just for the record, all of my predictions were right. I didn't necessarily get all the right rounds, but I picked all of the right winners, which is good. Some people said Paulie Malignaggi was going to box Shawn Porter's head off. I knew it was going to be a good fight. I expected it to be a little bit more competitive than what it was, but it is what it is. I did have Shawn Porter winning. I thought Paulie Malignaggi's chin would last the duration of the fight, so I was wrong in that aspect. But it was a good breakout performance for Shawn Porter. As far as Paulie Malignaggi, I don't know if he should retire. I'm thinking probably so, because at the end of the day, he's a great commentator. He has a lot of knowledge on the boxing. It's just in the division you are choosing to fight, you don't have the firepower. You're smart, but I just don't see him beating the top guys, and this was another example of that. And even look at his past record. Every step up that he's had, he's lost. Miguel Cotto, Amir Khan, Ricky Hatton. I mean, he lost to all those guys except for Zab Judah, and Zab Judah is someone who I definitely think should have retired already. So, I mean, it was a good win for Brooklyn or for Paulie Malignaggi, but I just don't see him beating the top guys. So when it gets to a point where I don't see you beating the top guys, and what are you in it for? You know what I mean? So I felt bad for Paulie Malignaggi. I will admit that. I definitely felt bad. He was like crying at the end, like because he was realizing, and I hate saying that when these fighters put blood, sweat, and tears behind this stuff, and they come to a realization that it might be time to hang him up. I remember Arturo Gatti versus Alfonso Gomez. I kind of got the same feeling. I think Gatti realized that his time in boxing had come to an end, and that's always a sad thing. Just because you don't want. I mean, it's heartbreaking to see an athlete do something since they were kids and children, and grow up through the ranks and fight these big fights and big paydays and win and lose and draw and all that, and then all of a sudden they have that reminder that the sport is outgrowing them or whatever, and that's kind of what I felt for Paulie Malignaggi. So I did feel bad for Paulie Malignaggi. Still a hell of a commentator, very smart. Again, I just don't think he has the firepower. Now let's talk about Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter is exciting, and one thing I like about Shawn Porter, he's aggressive. He looks like he's learning from fight to fight, and he doesn't care if he looks like a Rigondeaux or if it's beautiful the way he's not like Jorge Linares where when he's boxing on, he's just boxing and setting it up beautifully. He does it at a weird, unorthodox pace. He doesn't care if some punches hit your arm. He's just coming like a tank, and he's coming to like batter you. And one thing, I think Paulie Malignaggi came out with the wrong game plan. I think he went into the fight kind of disrespectful towards Shawn Porter, like not expecting him to be much, like thinking it was going to be like an Adrian Broner fight. Broner and Porter are two different fighters. Porter was a guy who was fighting over 154 pounds as an amateur. So he looked strong, like physically strong. Broner is a guy who jumped up 2 weight classes, and Paulie Malignaggi fought him in his first fight at welterweight. So he wasn't necessarily acclimated. Even though he looks big, you still have to be acclimated to that weight division. And Shawn Porter is that. Plus their stylistically, they're a lot different. Adrian Broner is a notoriously slow starter, where Shawn Porter isn't necessarily a slow starter. He'll try to get on you while he's fresh. So I think he came out with the wrong game plan. But to Shawn Porter's credit, it takes a certain fighter to capitalize on any fighter's mistakes. Some people want to make excuses like, oh, he came out with the wrong game plan. Yeah, but not everyone can capitalize when a fighter does have the wrong game plan. Like Timothy Bradley versus Ruslan Provodnikov. Timothy Bradley, another fighter, and another fight where I feel a fighter came out with the wrong game plan. Bradley came out with the wrong game plan with this chip on his shoulder bullshit. But Ruslan was the one that capitalized on it. And you still have to be able, you know what I mean? Just someone coming out with the wrong game plan, that doesn't necessarily mean the opponent's going to win. It takes the fighter to do the right things. So I think Shawn Porter did that. He swarmed him. He didn't give him much breathing room. He made him uncomfortable, and he defended his belt, most importantly, and he did it in great fashion, stopping Paulie Malignaggi in the 4th round. So the future's looking bright for Shawn Porter. I definitely want to see him rise and blossom as a fighter. Some people are screaming Mayweather. I mean, it could be argued he has a belt, but I'd really rather see Shawn Porter versus a fighter like Keith Thurman. I don't know what about it. It's just 2 rising stars. And then the winner of that fight Mayweather. I think the stakes will be higher. But I have no problem with Porter fighting Malignaggi. That'd be a young, black, aggressive fighter who's on the rise, looked good in recent fights with the belt, fighting Mayweather. So I'm not anti it. I would just rather see Keith Thurman, Shawn Porter, like in an eliminator type fight while it's still good. And then the winner of that fight, Mayweather. That's just me personally. Or even the Kell Brook and Shawn Porter. I think that's another good fight. 2 young, strong fighters. And I mean, like I said, the sky's looking bright. I really like Shawn Porter. I like what he represents. He seems very humble and level-headed. He's not necessarily doing all this flashy stuff like Broner in his pre-fight. He likes to have fun. That's why they call him Showtime. They showed a little montage of him and his father Ken training, and then they were both dancing and just having a good time. But then when the lights are shining, then they come to fight and they come with it. So you got to respect that. Again, Shawn Porter, you can match him up with any of the top welterweights, and I think it's an interesting fight. Even if Maidana loses to Mayweather, I would like to see that fight because Maidana is still a good fighter. But most importantly, I think Keith Thurman, Shawn Porter is the fight to make. I love that fight. And we'll see if Thurman, how he looks against Julio Diaz, a mutual opponent of Shawn Porter, and take it from there. If he does good against Julio Diaz, then Thurman and Porter is what I really want to see. If not, like I said, you got guys like Kell Brook, you got Mayweather. Shawn Porter's not in a Golden Boy contract. He has a working relationship with them. I would even love to see a Pacquiao and a Shawn Porter. So like I said, Shawn Porter, he's already being mentioned with like the big dogs, Mayweathers and the Pacquiaos, and they all have belts. Let's unify. And especially since he's one of the rare fighters, unlike a Keith Thurman, that is signed to Golden Boy. Shawn Porter has the flexibility where he can fight a Kell Brook, he can fight a Pacquiao, to my knowledge, and he has that freedom. So great fights. I would definitely like to see him and Pacquiao. They have history sparring together. So let's see something. Let's just see a good fight. But he dismantled Paulie Malignaggi, destroyed him. Paulie Malignaggi was just, like I said, didn't have the firepower. He was outmatched, and he came in fighting a dumb fight. And like I said, not everyone's Adrian Broner. You can't come in fighting and disrespecting anybody at this level of boxing. And he said Shawn Porter was basic. Shawn Porter proved otherwise last night. Just connected him and just really fatigued him. Like I said, I don't understand, and I'm going to make a separate video about this. I don't understand for the life of me why some of these fighters choose and insist on fighting for the public. That's why when Mayweather says stuff, I fight for me. I mean, I feel him because these a lot of times it's like people come in with a chip on their shoulder, like Paulie Malignaggi. They say he's a light puncher, and it looks like he is. 7 knockouts, and same thing with Timothy Bradley. Then they come in trying to prove that they're not light punchers. Like, just fight the way you've always been winning. Don't come trying to fight and impress people and like, oh, I got to bring it toe to toe and I got to embarrass this kid. Wait for the opportunities to present itself. If you're a light puncher, be a hell of a boxing light puncher. You know what I mean? Pernell Whitaker's not the biggest puncher, but he was a good, excellent fighter. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think these fighters they get brainwashed into feeling they have to fight a certain type of way, and I think that's what Paulie Malignaggi, it's like he wants to prove he's not a light puncher and make a statement. He should have chose those early rounds to box, and become difficult to get to. Use way better lateral movement. Use your jab that Paulie Malignaggi is so famous for using. He didn't really do that. He made it a dogfight, which is exactly what benefited Shawn Porter, not the lighter puncher. Let me know what you guys think of this assessment. As always, hate, comment, or subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing off.